Hey, this is Ian Westerman, head pro at EssentialTennis.com, where it's my mission to bring passionate instruction to passionate tennis players all over the world, just like you. And in today's strategy lesson, I'm going to talk to you about how to beat lobbers without a good overhead. If you're a doubles player, then you deal with a lot of lobs, especially if you are aggressively minded and you like to come into the net a lot. You undoubtedly will deal with players who like to lob a lot. And I actually just finished recording a video about the best possible way to deal with that, which had to do with anticipation, positioning, having a killer overhead. But what about if you don't have a killer overhead? And this question is actually for Rick Martin on Facebook. And this was exactly his question. How do, aside from having a huge overhead, how can I deal with players who lob a lot? Well, Rick, first and foremost, I want you to have a huge overhead. But if you don't, I definitely have some suggestions for you. First of all, before you get too far into the point, as the point develops, especially again if you're aggressively minded and you like to close into the net, the longer the point goes and the closer you get to the net, the more likely that lob is going to come. So especially early on in the points, if you can get some kind of drop shot going, whether that be a drop volley maybe by your partner, maybe a poach and a short angle drop volley over to the other side, or it could even be, especially if your opponent doesn't have the best serve in the world, right off of the return of serve, you could certainly play a drop shot short to their side of the court. Some way or another, if you can draw the lobber closer to the net, the closer they get to the net, the more difficult it is to lob you and the less sense it makes to lob you, especially if you're still back on the baseline. This pulls them out of what is very likely their comfort zone, which is back behind the baseline playing defensive shots. So if we can pull them out of their comfort zone, make them hit volleys and make them hit overheads instead, then we've taken a step in the right direction. We're not just giving them the opportunity, point after point, to hit their favorite shot. Okay? So that's suggestion number one. Suggestion number two is, very generally speaking, at most levels of doubles, you're going to have a net player and a baseline player, the majority of the time. Very generally speaking, the higher level doubles you see, the more all four players are trying to get to the net. Not always, but very, very commonly. But in most levels of doubles, there's one up and one back at some point during the point. And when that happens, and you're playing a lob-happy team, you want to focus your efforts on that net player as early and as often as possible. Especially if you're still trying to come into the net, you're still trying to be offensive. The sooner you can get the ball to this player, the less likely you're going to have just lob after lob after lob. Can this player conceivably hit a lob as well? Yes, they can. But again, the closer they get to the net, the tougher that shot is to execute. There's just less distance for them to work with, less room for them to work with to hit the right height, to hit the right angle of shot, to successfully get it over you. Plus, if you're one up, one back on both sides, it just doesn't make as much sense for them to lob anymore. More than likely, they'll just keep it back down the line, back to the baseline player on your side of the court. And now, if you can kind of combine forces and focus and kind of pick on that net player, especially if they're not great, then that can be a great tactic to use to take the focus off that baseline lobber and make this person kind of come up with the goods instead. Lastly, anticipation is key. And I talked about this in the other lob video, Rick, which I suggest you watch. We'll link to that at the end of this video. You must be able to anticipate when that lob is coming based on a lot of factors, based on that opponent's tendencies, how frequently they like to lob, and what positions they like to lob, their balance, their preparation with their racket. These are all things you should be watching closely, especially as you start to come into the net, because they like to lob a lot, and especially since we're kind of assuming you don't have a great overhead. The earlier you can see that lob coming, the better of a position you can get yourself in to hopefully, at the very least, just neutralize the point, try to use some of these suggestions, and pull them out of their comfort zone. So Rick, hopefully that's helpful. And if you've tuned in today, hopefully it's been helpful to you as well. If so, do me a favor and click like. And also be sure to subscribe to the Essential Tennis YouTube channel so you don't miss out on future lessons and tutorials and pro footage and bullseye challenge videos, all kinds of stuff that we're coming out with on a regular basis. Also, if you have any comments or questions, be sure to leave those down below. And with that, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your time and your attention. Take care, and good luck with your tennis.